On September 1, 1939, at the break of dawn, the German military unleashed its formidable forces upon Poland. This was not merely an invasion, it was the chilling prelude to a global conflagration, a conflict that would swiftly engulf continents and redefine the very meaning of warfare. For years, Europe had simmered with political tension, economic hardship, and ideological extremism. Now, the dam had burst. The world watched, horrified, as tanks rolled, planes roared, and an era of unprecedented violence began. This day marked the official beginning of World War II, a conflict that would become the largest and most devastating in human history. At the heart of this unfolding tragedy was Adolf Hitler, the charismatic yet tyrannical leader of Nazi Germany. Driven by a fervent ideology of racial supremacy and territorial expansion, Hitler envisioned a vast German empire dominating Europe. His ambition was boundless, his methods ruthless. The invasion of Poland was not an isolated act, but the calculated first step in a grander design to redraw the map of Europe and impose his will upon nations. The world was about to discover the terrifying cost of such unbridled ambition, as Hitler's war machine demonstrated its terrifying efficiency, aiming to expand its dominion far beyond its initial borders. Just weeks before the invasion of Poland, another pivotal and cynical maneuver reshaped the European political landscape. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator, entered into the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Nazi Germany in August 1939. This non-aggression treaty, outwardly a pledge of peace, contained a secret protocol to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. For Stalin, it was a tactical play, buying time and expanding Soviet territory. But it also emboldened Hitler, removing the threat of a two-front war in the East and allowing him to focus his initial aggression westward, accelerating the descent into global conflict and broadening its scope. Germany's invasion of Poland was a stark demonstration of a terrifying new military doctrine, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This strategy relied on rapid, coordinated assaults using tanks, motorized infantry, and overwhelming air support to bypass enemy defenses, encircle forces, and cause widespread panic. Poland quickly succumbed to this relentless onslaught. The speed and efficiency of the Blitzkrieg shocked the world, demonstrating a level of military coordination and destructive power previously unseen. It was a brutal testament to the new face of warfare, designed to overwhelm and devastate an enemy in record time, setting a terrifying precedent for the scale of future conflicts. The fall of Poland was just the beginning. In the spring of 1940, Hitler turned his attention west. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France all fell with startling rapidity under the weight of the German Blitzkrieg. Paris, the city of light, was occupied by June. The speed of these victories underscored the terrifying effectiveness of Germany's new war machine, extending the conflict far beyond its initial borders. Europe was quickly becoming a chessboard for Hitler's ambitions, and the sheer number of nations falling under Axis control was a clear indicator of the expanding scale of this devastating conflict, challenging the very notion of national sovereignty. With France fallen, Great Britain stood as the last major bastion against Nazi domination in Western Europe. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, a defiant and inspiring leader, rallied the British people with his unwavering resolve. Across the English Channel, Adolf Hitler prepared for an invasion, but first, he needed to neutralize the Royal Air Force. From July to October 1940, the skies over Britain became the battleground for the Battle of Britain, an intense air campaign. This aerial struggle was a desperate fight for survival, demonstrating the global reach of the conflict and the devastating potential of air power, marking a critical moment in the war's expansion. While Europe burned, the tentacles of war began to reach across oceans and continents. The conflict was no longer confined to the European theater. The United Kingdom, under constant threat, began to expand its own military operations into North Africa and the Mediterranean, clashing with Italian and German forces. This expansion demonstrated that the struggle was truly becoming global, pulling in distant nations and resources. The immense logistical challenges and varied terrains involved in these new fronts highlighted the unprecedented scale of the conflict, demanding global coordination and a relentless commitment of resources, underscoring its growing geographic spread. Half a world away, in the Asia-Pacific region, another major power was aggressively pursuing its own expansionist policies. Imperial Japan, led by Emperor Hirohito, sought to establish a Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, which was, in essence, a vast colonial empire under Japanese dominance. This ambition had already led to years of brutal conflict in China, but by the early 1940s, Japan's sights were set on seizing resource-rich territories held by Western powers. This would soon draw the sleeping giant of the United States into the fray, ensuring that World War II would indeed be a truly global conflict, fought across vast oceanic distances. Despite their non-aggression pact, Adolf Hitler harbored deep ideological hatred for communism and saw the Soviet Union as a prime target for German expansion. On June 22, 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. This audacious move opened the Eastern Front, which would become the largest land conflict in human history. Millions of soldiers clashed across a vast front stretching thousands of miles. The scale of this new conflict was staggering, consuming immense resources and human lives, and dramatically amplifying the global devastation of the war, drawing in millions more combatants and civilians. Even before its official entry into the war, the United States, under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, recognized the existential threat posed by the Axis powers. In March 1941, Congress passed the Lend-Lease Act. This crucial legislation allowed the U.S. to provide massive amounts of military aid, food, and other supplies to the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and other allied nations. It was a strategic move that transformed America into the arsenal of democracy, arming those fighting against fascism and militarism without directly entering combat. This pivotal act foreshadowed America's eventual direct involvement, demonstrating a burgeoning global commitment. The fragile peace for the United States shattered on December 7, 1941. Early that Sunday morning, Japan launched a surprise aerial attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Waves of Japanese planes inflicted catastrophic damage on the U.S. Pacific Fleet, killing over 2,400 Americans. This audacious and devastating attack immediately propelled the United States into World War II. President Roosevelt declared it a date which will live in infamy, and America, with its vast industrial and military potential, fully committed to the global conflict, transforming it into a truly worldwide struggle, unprecedented in its scope and stakes. With the United States now fully engaged, World War II truly became a global conflict. The war would be fought not just in Europe's muddy fields, but across the vast expanses of the Pacific Ocean, in the deserts of North Africa, and the jungles of Southeast Asia. The entry of the U.S. brought immense industrial power and manpower into the Allied cause, but it also meant the conflict's reach was now unparalleled, its fronts stretching across continents and oceans. This escalation meant that nearly every corner of the world would feel the devastating impact of this colossal struggle, leaving no nation untouched by its reach. Deep within the Soviet Union, a monumental struggle unfolded that would fundamentally alter the course of the war, the Battle of Stalingrad. From August 1942 to February 1943, German and Soviet forces engaged in an epic, brutal urban battle. The German Sixth Army, Hitler's elite, was ultimately encircled and annihilated by a tenacious Soviet defense and counteroffensive. This catastrophic defeat marked a crucial turning point on the Eastern Front. It shattered the myth of German invincibility and demonstrated the immense human cost of the war, foreshadowing the relentless Soviet drive westward and the eventual devastating defeat of Germany. The Eastern Front, ignited by Operation Barbarossa, was not just the largest land conflict, it was a theater of unimaginable brutality and immense casualties. For 4 long years, German and Soviet forces fought with a ferocity rarely seen, characterized by scorched earth tactics, colossal tank battles, and the widespread targeting of civilians. Millions perished, both soldiers and non-combatants, as entire cities were reduced to rubble. The scale of destruction and human suffering on this front alone was staggering, epitomizing the most devastating aspect of World War II, a relentless grind that pushed both societies to their absolute limits. Amidst the global chaos, Nazi Germany perpetrated an unparalleled horror, the Holocaust. This was a systemic, state-sponsored genocide, driven by Adolf Hitler's twisted racial ideology. Approximately 6 million Jews, along with millions of Roma, Slavs, homosexuals, disabled persons, and political opponents, were systematically persecuted and murdered. Concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau became industrial sites of death. The Holocaust stands as a stark testament to the depths of human cruelty and the devastating consequences of unchecked hatred, a dark stain on history that underscores the horrific civilian toll of World War II. The Holocaust was just one horrific example of the widespread war crimes and atrocities committed during World War II. All sides, to varying degrees, were responsible for actions that violated human dignity and international law. From the rape of Nanking by Japanese forces to Soviet massacres and Allied strategic bombing of civilian areas, the conflict witnessed a tragic breakdown of moral boundaries. The sheer scale of the war seemed to embolden extreme brutality, leaving a legacy of profound moral questions and indelible scars. This widespread disregard for civilian life further cemented the war's status as the most devastating conflict, impacting countless innocent lives. By 1944, the tide had begun to turn against Germany. The Allies, spearheaded by the United States and the United Kingdom, prepared for a massive invasion of Nazi-occupied Western Europe. On June 6, 1944, under the codename Operation Overlord, they launched D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Thousands of ships, planes, and land craft, carrying hundreds of thousands of Allied troops, converged on the beaches of Normandy, France. This monumental undertaking opened a crucial second front in the West, forcing Germany to divide its forces and paving the way for the liberation of Western Europe. It was a testament to the immense logistical scale of the conflict. Following the success of D-Day, Allied forces pushed relentlessly eastward, liberating towns and cities across France. Paris was freed in August 1944. The invasion's success was a massive blow to German morale and resources, though the fighting remained fierce. Generals like Omar Bradley and Bernard Montgomery led their respective forces, driving toward the German border. The opening of this western front, combined with the relentless Soviet pressure from the east, stretched Germany's military to its breaking point. The coordinated effort across multiple fronts underscored the truly global and interconnected nature of the war, making its eventual conclusion inevitable. As winter approached in December 1944, Hitler made one last desperate gamble. He launched the Battle of the Bulge, a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, aiming to split the Allied lines and recapture the port of Antwerp. German panzer divisions, initially achieving significant breakthroughs, created a large bulge in the Allied front. The battle was a brutal, weeks-long struggle in freezing conditions. Despite heavy Allied casualties, the German offensive ultimately failed due to fuel shortages and fierce resistance. This was the last major German offensive of the war, a final, devastating effort that only prolonged the suffering. By April 1945, the Soviet Red Army had encircled Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. What followed was a brutal, block-by-block struggle as Soviet forces fought their way into the city against fanatical German resistance. Adolf Hitler, defiant to the end, remained in his bunker as the city crumbled around him. On April 30, he committed suicide. Days later, on May 2, Berlin fell. The capture of Berlin marked the symbolic and actual end of the war in Europe, a devastating final act to a continent-spanning conflict, symbolizing the complete collapse of Hitler's Reich and the immense sacrifices made. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered unconditionally. Across Europe and the Allied world, celebrations erupted as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, was proclaimed. Years of brutal warfare, immense sacrifices, and unimaginable devastation had finally come to an end on the European continent. While joyous, the celebrations were also somber, as the true cost of the war began to be tallied. The world had witnessed the profound suffering brought about by total war, and though one front was silent, the global conflict still raged on in the Pacific, a stark reminder of the war's immense scale. Even as Europe celebrated peace, the war in the Pacific continued its brutal trajectory. Japan, despite heavy losses, refused to surrender. American forces, under generals like Douglas MacArthur, engaged in a costly island-hopping campaign, seizing strategic islands closer to Japan. Battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa were marked by fierce Japanese resistance, including desperate kamikaze attacks where pilots deliberately crashed their planes into Allied ships. This demonstrated the immense human cost and the devastating determination that characterized the Pacific theater, pushing the conflict to new extremes of sacrifice and destruction, far from Europe. Faced with the prospect of a prolonged and incredibly costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, and hoping to bring the war to a swift end, the United States made a momentous and terrifying decision. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9, a second atomic bomb devastated Nagasaki. These unprecedented attacks unleashed a new level of destructive power, instantly obliterating cities and causing immense, agonizing civilian casualties. The world had entered the atomic age, forever changed by this new devastating capability. The twin shocks of the atomic bombings, coupled with the Soviet Union's declaration of war and subsequent invasion of Manchuria, finally compelled Japan to surrender. On August 15, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender over radio, an unprecedented act for a Japanese monarch. The formal surrender ceremony took place on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, officially marking the end of World War II. After 6 long, devastating years, the largest and most destructive conflict in human history had finally come to its cataclysmic conclusion, leaving a world scarred and forever altered. The true measure of World War II's devastation lies in its staggering human cost. From the war-torn battlefields of Europe to the bombed-out cities of Asia, an unimaginable number of lives were extinguished. The exact figures are still debated, but historical consensus paints a grim picture of widespread loss. This was a conflict that spared few, touching every continent and leaving a deep, irreversible wound on the global population. The following statistics only begin to capture the immense scale of sorrow and destruction inflicted upon humanity, making it an unparalleled tragedy in our collective memory and history. The most sobering statistic of World War II is the total number of casualties. Historians estimate that between 70 to 85 million people perished during the 6 years of conflict. This horrifying figure includes both military personnel and an even larger number of civilians caught in the crossfire, victims of bombings, atrocities, and deliberate extermination. To put this into perspective, it represents a significant percentage of the world's population at the time. This immense death toll undeniably cements World War II's place as the most devastating global conflict in human history, an absolute catastrophe for humankind. One of the defining and most devastating characteristics of World War II was the disproportionate number of civilian casualties compared to previous conflicts. While approximately 20 to 25 million military personnel died in combat or from war-related causes, the civilian death toll was far higher. An estimated 50 to 60 million civilians perished due to bombings, starvation, disease, massacres, and genocidal policies like the Holocaust. This highlights the total war aspect, where the entire population, not just soldiers, became targets, amplifying the scale of devastation and suffering across the globe, a truly harrowing statistic. Among the major powers, the Soviet Union bore the brunt of the human cost, suffering the highest military casualties of any nation. An estimated 10 to 11 million Soviet soldiers died fighting on the Eastern Front, a testament to the brutal ferocity of the conflict there and the sheer scale of the battles against Nazi Germany. Beyond military losses, Soviet civilian deaths were also catastrophic, reaching into the tens of millions. This staggering sacrifice, while pivotal in defeating the Axis, profoundly devastated Soviet society, leaving a deep demographic and psychological scar that resonated for generations, a grim reminder of the war's unprecedented scale. Entering the war later, the United States mobilized its vast industrial capacity and manpower to become a decisive force in both the European and Pacific theaters. Under President Franklin D. Roosevelt and later Harry S. Truman, the U.S. deployed millions of soldiers, sailors, and airmen, ultimately playing a critical role in the D-Day landings and the final defeat of Japan. While its geographical distance from the main fronts meant fewer civilian casualties compared to Europe or Asia, American military losses were still significant, reflecting its immense commitment to the global struggle and the heavy toll exacted by the protracted conflict. The United Kingdom, under the unyielding leadership of Winston Churchill, stood as a bulwark against Nazi aggression from the very beginning. Enduring the Battle of Britain and the relentless Blitz, Britain mobilized its empire and Commonwealth forces, playing crucial roles across multiple fronts, from North Africa to Italy, and in the pivotal D-Day invasion. Despite facing immense challenges, including severe rationing and continuous aerial bombardment, the British people's resilience and their military's widespread deployments underscored the truly global nature of the Allied effort. Their steadfast resolve was instrumental in turning the tide against the Axis powers. Germany, under Adolf Hitler, initiated the war with its aggressive expansionist policies and blitzkrieg tactics, quickly dominating much of Europe. The Wehrmacht, initially seen as unstoppable, spread destruction across the continent, from Poland to France and deep into the Soviet Union. However, their ambition ultimately overreached. The combined strength of the Allied powers, coupled with the immense sacrifices on the Eastern Front, led to Germany's crushing defeat. Its cities were devastated by bombing, its military decimated, and its leadership brought to justice, marking a profound and devastating end to Hitler's Third Reich. Imperial Japan's aggressive pursuit of an empire in Asia-Pacific led to years of brutal conflict, drawing the United States into the global war after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Its forces fought fiercely across vast ocean territories, using desperate tactics like kamikaze attacks. However, facing overwhelming Allied naval and air power, coupled with the devastating impact of the atomic bombs, Japan eventually surrendered. The war left Japan's infrastructure shattered, its cities in ruins, and its global ambitions crushed, ending its imperial era and marking a new chapter for the nation under Allied occupation, a profound and devastating conclusion. From the ashes of this unprecedented devastation, humanity sought to build a framework for lasting peace. In 1945, the United Nations was established. Its primary goal was to prevent future global conflicts on the scale of World War II, fostering international cooperation, diplomacy, and respect for human rights. The creation of the UN was a direct response to the horrors witnessed, a global commitment to collective security and a testament to the world's determination to learn from its most devastating conflict. It was an ambitious, hopeful resolution amidst the immense global scars. World War II forced humanity to confront the darkest aspects of its nature, the devastating potential of unchecked ambition, ideological extremism, and technological destruction. Yet, it also showcased incredible resilience, courage, and the capacity for international cooperation. The scale of its global reach, involving every major power and impacting countless nations, truly defined it as the largest conflict. The staggering death toll, the widespread atrocities, and the complete destruction of cities marked it as the most devastating. Its legacy continues to shape international relations, military strategy, and our understanding of peace. The concept of total war came to its terrifying zenith during World War II. It was a conflict where economic, industrial, and human resources of entire nations were fully mobilized, blurring the lines between combatants and civilians. Strategic bombing flattened cities, blockades starved populations, and genocidal policies targeted entire ethnic groups. This all-encompassing nature meant that every aspect of society was dedicated to the war effort, and every citizen became a potential victim. This level of societal devastation and engagement was unparalleled, defining it as the largest and most devastating global conflict. Beyond the immediate destruction, World War II irrevocably changed the global geopolitical landscape. Old empires crumbled, new superpowers emerged, and the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union began to brew, casting a new shadow over international relations. The war spurred immense technological advancements, reshaped national borders, and catalyzed movements for decolonization. Its profound impact continues to resonate today, in the institutions we've built, the conflicts we remember, and the lessons we strive to teach future generations. The world after 1945 was a fundamentally different place, forged in the fires of unprecedented global devastation. To fully grasp the magnitude of World War II is to understand that it was not merely a series of battles, but a transformative event that redefined human potential for both destruction and resilience. It involved every major global power, drawing in diverse peoples from every continent, fighting across land, sea, and air. The sheer number of combatants, the vastness of its battlefields, and the unprecedented scale of its industrial mobilization make it undeniably the largest conflict. The tens of millions of dead, the widespread atrocities, and the indelible scars on societies confirm its status as the most devastating. Even today, over 75 years later, the echoes of World War II reverberate across the globe. Its history serves as a constant, somber reminder of the fragility of peace and the horrific consequences of ideological extremism and international aggression. The stories of its heroes and victims, its triumphs and tragedies, continue to be told, ensuring that the lessons learned from humanity's largest and most devastating conflict are never forgotten. It is a shared legacy, demanding vigilance, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to diplomacy, to ensure such global devastation is never again unleashed upon the world.